Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare
Hare Krishna, Prasannatma, Balaram, Prabhuji, Dalot Pranams.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu, Dandas Pranams to you.
Dalot Pranams, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna, dear devotees, welcome all of you for the today's morning program. Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya, and today we are very fortunate to have His Grace Prasannatma Balaram Prabhu, and he will elevate Srimad Bhagavatam, 5th canto, 6th chapter, and text 9. Over to you, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhu. Thank you so much. So, Hare Krishna to all the devotees. So, Prabhu, is my audio, video okay? You are able to hear?
Yes, Prabhuji.
Is it clear?
Yes, Prabhuji.
Thank you. So, also take this opportunity to thank Nityam Bhagavata Seva to give me this opportunity to do this small seva. So, thank you so much. I'll just go ahead and then share the verse. Just a minute. Okay. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narotamam Devim Saraswatam Vyasam Tato Jaya Mudiraye Nashta Prayeshu Abhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtaki Mukam Karoti Vachalam Pangum Langayate Girim Yat Kripatam Maham Vande Sri Guru Dinatarinam Paramananda Madhavam Sri Chaitanya Ishwaram. Hare Krishna. So you all are able to see the screen, what I am sharing now?
Yes, Prabhuji.
Okay, so today we are looking at Srimad Bhagavatam, 5th canto, 6th chapter, verse number 9. So this verse, like all the previous verses, is a prose. So I just try to read that. Yasya kilanu charitam upakarmya punka venka putakanam raja arhan namo pashikshaya kalau adharma utkrishyamane Havitavyena vimohita swadharma patam akuto bhayam apahaya kupata pakandham sama manjasham nija manishaya manda sampravartayishyate. So that's the verse. We just try to see the word to word meanings also. Yasya, of whom, that is Lord Rishabhadeva. Kila anucharitam, pastimes as a Paramahamsa, above all regulative Varnashrama principles. Upakarnya, hearing. Kunka Venka Putakanam, of Kunka, Venka and Putaka. Raja, the king. Arhat Nama, whose name was Arhat, now known as the Jain. Upashikshya, limiting the activities of Lord Rishabhdev in his Paramahamsa feature, Kalau, in this age of Kali. Adharme utkrishyamane, because of increasing irreligious life. Bhavithavyena, by that which was about to happen. Vimohitaha, bewildered. Swadharma patam, the path of religion. Akutha bayam, which is free from all kinds of fearful danger. Apahaya, giving up. Such practices as cleanliness, truthfulness, control of the senses and mind, simplicity, the principles of religion, and practical application of knowledge. Then, Tupata Pakhandam, the wrong path of atheism. Asamanjasam, improper or against the Vedic literature. Nija Manishaya, by his own fertile brain. Mandaha, most foolish. Sampravarta Ishyate, will introduce. So I will read the translation as well as the purport by Srila Prabhupada. Jai Srila Prabhupada. The translation, Sukadev Goswami continued speaking to Maharaj Parikshit. My dear king, the king of Konka, Venka and Kutaka, whose name was Arhat, heard of the activities of Rishabhadeva and imitating Rishabhadeva's principles, introduced a new system of religion. Taking advantage of Kali Yuga, the age of sinful activity, King Arhat, being bewildered, gave up the Vedic principles which are free from risk and concocted a new system of religion opposed to the Vedas. That was the beginning of the Jain Dharma. Many so-called religious followers followed this atheistic system. Purport. So when Lord Sri Krishna was present on this planet, a person named Paundraka imitated the four-handed Narayana and declared himself the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He desired to compete with Krishna. Similarly, during the time of Lord Rishabhadeva, the king of Konka and Venka acted like a Paramahamsa and imitated Lord Rishabhadeva. He introduced a system of religion and took advantage of the fallen condition of the people in this age of Kali. It is said in Vedic literatures that people in this age will be more inclined to accept anyone as the Supreme Lord and accept any religious system opposed to Vedic principles. The people in this age are described as Mandaha Sumanda Mataya. Generally, they have no spiritual culture and therefore they are very fallen. Due to this, they will accept any religious system. Due to their misfortune, they forget the Vedic principles. Following non-Vedic principles in this age, they think themselves the Supreme Lord and thus spread the cult of atheism all over the world. Hare Krishna. So this is the verse that we are going to look at. So before we get started, Om Ajnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Dadati Swapadantikam Namo Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gauravakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So, Hare Krishna. We continue with verse 9, in 5, 6, and then we are looking at verse 9 today. So, the background, as you all are aware, Rishabhdeva has actually ended his avatar. And then in the previous verses, we saw how he ended his avatar. So, by immolation, and then there is this forest fire that happened and all that, and then he made it look like he perished in the forest fire. But then we have our acharyas who very nicely explain that Rishabdev's body is not a material body. It's a body which is spiritual. So it can never be burnt or it will not come to an end. Just that he disappeared. That was the background. And now we will see what all happened after that event or after that incident. We'll try to see what happened. Just seeking the blessings of all the Vaishnavas and Vaishnavis who are present here. Kindly bless me so that the right words come at the right time in the right spirit. Doing this as a seva for the Guru Parampara, and for the pleasure of the Lordships, and also as a purification for my own self. Hare Krishna. So in this particular verse, there is this mention of the king called Arhat, so who is ruling over the kingdoms of Konka, Venka, and Putaka. And this king actually heard all the activities of Lord Rishabhadeva. And he was very impressed by the activities of Lord Rishabhadev. He was also very inspired. And so he starts to copy and then imitate. This is quite natural. Generally, if we like somebody or if we are inspired, then we tend to copy or imitate that particular person. Now, that's a very dangerous thing, and that's the aspect that is being brought out by Srila Prabhupada in the purports, and then in even the subsequent verses also, this continues. So actually, and then Arhat was a person who was in position, who had a lot of power because he was a king. So he could do anything. So he was inspired by the activities. So he was not willing to listen because he was in a position of power. And so he ended up introducing a new system of religion itself. And that religion predominantly was based on atheistic principles. He did away with all the austerities and all the good things, like cleanliness, and then of course he included truthfulness and so on and so forth. So he did away all of that, and then he introduced a system of religion which made the people not to follow all these and then just copy Lord Rishabhadev and then lead their lives in that way. So he concocted a new system of religion, which was actually opposed to the Vedic system. And then people accepted it also because he was a king. So maybe some of them were forced to accept, and some of them must have thought that this looks better, this is more easy. So they left the safety of Vedic principles, and then they took on to this particular religious principle, which was actually very easy to follow. So thereby it was very attractive. So if you look at, of course, this was everybody else except devotees, except Vaishnavas. I'm sure Vaishnavas wouldn't have accepted it. So we've seen that in the history also. There is always a segment of people who will never get deviated or never fall, even in the worst of the worst situations. In the Kali Yuga, even when Buddhism was spreading, when Jainism was spreading, when there were so many apasampradayas that were spreading, still there was this section of devotees who continued the tenets, or they preserved the Vedic system, and then they continued to practice and then also propagate and also pass on to the next generation. So this aspect we can see. So now, so as we are talking about history, then in history we are also seeing that there is always this opposition to Lord Krishna. So that has happened in the past. That has happened. That is happening even now, and I'm sure it will happen in the future also. So they follow this non-Vedic principles, and then they accept any religious system. So that is why in the purport they are described as Manda Sumanda Mataya. So such people spread the cult of atheism all over the world. Now, Srila Prabhupada actually is giving an example of Paundrak Vasudev, who was a king of Russia. And then he was also a friend of the king of Kashi. So we know king of Kashi was inimical to Lord Krishna. So now what happens is this particular person, Paundraka, he actually begins to consider himself as a real Vasudeva. Now he reasons like this. He says, and then he is actually, there is so much of enmity to Lord Krishna. So he says, what is the difference between Krishna and myself? Krishna, who's staying in, he is a contemporary of Lord Krishna. So he was present when Lord Krishna was present, and then his leelas were going on. So even in the presence of Lord Krishna, then you have such individuals. So he reasoned like this. He said, what is the difference between Krishna and then myself? He is also a king. I am also king. He also has a power over a certain jurisdiction. He has a power. I also have the same. So I am Narayana. So I am Vasudeva. And then he was so convinced by this. And then he also had his own followers who also believed and accepted him as the actual Vasudeva. So, he actually begins to dress himself like Krishna. So that imitation. So you see that running parallel here in Lord Rishabdeva's pastime also, where this king Arhat, he also exhibited himself in the same way, like being unclean, unkept hair, and then pulling out the hair. There are many things that he begins to do, which is what Rishabdev was doing. But then, of course, we all have seen why Rishabdev was doing that. That was to keep away the people, otherwise they were disturbing him, so on and so forth. But anyway, this is more for fame, for name, for recognition, and so on and so forth. So there's a whole lot of difference between the two. Now, this person was so convinced about his identity that he actually sends a declaration to Dwaraka through a messenger. He sends to Lord Krishna. And then in that declaration, what he does actually is, he is telling them to give up. He's saying that you should give up your title as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Then you should give up your position. You should give up your conch, disc, etc. And then you should hand it over to him. And then you should accept me as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So on and so forth. There's one whole paragraph of the declaration that is being read in the Dwaraka, in the presence of Lord Krishna, as well as all the courtiers. And so when the messenger reads it, there is amusement in the court, and then there is laughter. So they burst out laughing, and there is this laughter actually lasts for a very long time. Everybody is amused, and then they are laughing at this particular thing. So then actually after that, then, including Krishna is also laughing. And then Krishna becomes serious, and then he decides that such impostors should be punished. That is to teach a lesson to the others. So saying, then he takes out his army, and then he marches, he goes to this particular king, as well as he attacks actually both Kashi as well as this particular place, both together. Now, Krishna could have done this without moving as much as even a finger. But then, yes, it's the pastime of the Lord where he wants to teach a lesson. So he goes there. And now this king, this Paundraka, who is proclaiming himself to be Vasudeva, he is actually a Kshatriya, a very brave Kshatriya. He was a good fighter also. He's not a person who's mad, okay, or somebody who's not a normal person. So he's a normal Kshatriya who knows his duty and all that. So he comes out to fight along with his soldiers. He comes out with a couple of Akshogini soldiers. But then a strange thing is, sight is seen when they see this king come out. So when the king comes out, he is coming out not with just two hands, but he is coming out with 4 hands. So there are 2 extra hands that have been attached to him, like how in dramas and then in fancy dresses and all, you see children, and then we attach 2 more hands if they have to depict Narayana. No? So something like that. So can you imagine a king, a responsible king, and he's coming out in the battlefield to fight with Krishna, and then he's coming out with this 4-handed thing, and then he is holding a conch, of course, an imitation conch, a disc, and then there is also this Kaustuba, which is there on his chest. He's wearing it around his neck, and then the earrings are also artificial. Everything, there is a lot of imitation that is there, and so seeing this again, there is amusement, there is laughter. So like this, we can see how the imposters they make a fool of themselves. And then, of course, the pastime goes on to say that he eventually is killed in the battle by Krishna. Now, Prabhupada is actually taking this example, and then he is also bringing out this aspect that how it is due to ignorance that people behave like this. So people don't know Krishna or the potencies of Krishna. So, if you, even in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says in the last verse of the 8th chapter, I think, where he says, "Eko amshena stito jagat." So, by this single small fragment of my potency, all this creation, whatever we discuss now, all these potentials are all coming from just a fraction of my potency, and so then we can imagine what is the actual potency of the Lord. We can't even imagine it. It is so great. So this way, Krishna actually concludes in Bhagavad Gita. That's what we saw. And then the Acharyas also are giving a nice way to reason this. So he says that we don't know Krishna. We don't know who is God. So we generally end up accepting anyone as God. So whoever is convincing us, then we think that that person is God. Then he gives the example of gold. Now, a person is not aware of gold. He doesn't know what is gold, what it looks like, and things like that. Then he can be easily cheated. Anybody can take him for a ride. So he can just show an iron or whatever and then say that this is gold. And then that person has to, believe, because he doesn't know what is gold. So there is no reference point for him to compare. So he has no clue. So in Adhyatmika, in spiritual science also, mostly this is the condition of the people because of Kali Yuga, the onslaught of Kali Yuga. There is so much of distortion that has happened that people have got confused and they have completely rejected this all tenets of spiritual knowledge or any Vedic instruction. Not only just the instruction, even the scriptures are rejected. So because it has been rejected, and then generations are now slowly going to pass through without this kind of association with the scriptures. So people are not aware. If you look at the whole world, okay, there is only certain places, at least in India, there is some amount of connection that is there. Even that is fast disappearing. The rate at which it is disappearing is astonishing, because if you look at the youth today, they don't know. They don't have any idea. So they believe anything and everything. And they also have ended up aping the West. So anything coming from the West is considered good. Everything except ISKCON. Of course, ISKCON has also actually come from the West. But then, except that, then everything else is good for them. So in this way, we can see how they have no clue of what is gold or who is God. And thereby they end up accepting anything. So this, the only way, is that, here we also see that we get cheated as we don't know what is the original. That's the conclusion that was there. So the only way that we can get out of this situation is to arm ourselves with the right knowledge. So as practicing devotees, as part of Srila Prabhupada's movement, it is our onus to share this right knowledge which is there with the people and drive out the ignorance, at least to some extent, drive out that ignorance, generate that spark in them so that they will want to hear more, know more about Lord Krishna, about themselves, about what is the relationship that we have with ourselves and then with Lord Krishna. And then why am I in this world? What is happening to me? So all these basic things, even if we are able to preach at a very basic level, then that helps in driving away the ignorance that is prevalent there. In fact, Prabhupada says you don't need to master the scriptures, you don't have to have mastery of everything. You just repeat. And then he takes that example of that small girl, Saraswati. There's a small girl, Saraswati, who's a child of a devotee. So he takes that example because she used to go around preaching. He says, like, she's a very good preacher. So what was she doing? She had just begun to walk and then she had just begun to speak, I think. So in that baby voice, she used to go and then ask people, whoever used to come to the temple where they were staying, she used to ask them, do you know Krishna? And then that person will obviously say no. He'll say, he is the supreme personality of Godhead. And then she used to go to the next person. And then she used to just ask this question, do you know Krishna? And then they'll say no. And then he'll say, she's the supreme, he is the supreme personality of God. So Prabhupada took that example. And then he used to, that as a reference, he used to say, see how nicely Saraswati is preaching to everyone. She is giving the message without any distortion, without any concoction. She's just delivering it as it is. So she's a wonderful preacher. So in this way, Prabhupada was highlighting how the right knowledge has to be given to the people. And if this is not happening, then the people will not develop the right sambandha or the right relationship with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. They will become influenced by others' concoction, or they themselves will end up concocting. And then they will be convinced about whatever their mind is saying, because the mind, they put too much of importance to the mind, whereas Vedic thing is the opposite. And then, because they don't have the right sambandha, whatever activities that they do, that is not right abhidaya also. They might have some hodgepodge understanding of the Lord, and then they will think that the work is worship, or Manav Seva is, Narayan Seva, and there's so many such sayings are there to mislead people. So they just pick up whatever is convenient for them, and then they think they are doing a wonderful job of going about practicing that particular aspect. But we should understand, or it's about time that they understood this. This is apasampradaya. So their abhidaya is not going to lead to proper prayojana. So it all starts with, so we know the aspect of sambandha, abhidaya, and prayojana, but if the sambandha itself is wrong, then abhidaya and prayojana also is not going to give any result. And so one has to start with the right knowledge. So from that perspective, knowledge becomes very important. And then right knowledge, where do we get? That has to come from the right source or the right person. So the aspect of parampara, people will have to have an understanding of that. But now, one good thing is that we have all of this. So we have, by the mercy of our Guru Parampara, by the mercy of Krishna, through the Guru Parampara, we are exposed to this particular Parampara system, and then the right knowledge. So we have the Bhagavad Gita, and then as it is, that is why it's called as it is, to remind us that it should not be concocted, or we should not add or subtract anything, but then just speak what is there in it. So in this way, we will have to continue to arm ourselves. And then what happens is, if this is not done, then we think anyone and everyone is God. So that is how we give room for the preachers, or for the teachers who come as preachers. And then they'll say things like, I am God, you are God. I know I am God, but you don't know that you are God now. So once you know, and then if you want to know about it, then you follow me. So things like this. And then we allow ourselves to be eaten. So Prabhupada actually came down very heavily on these people, on these imposters. And then he said, like, these imposters of God who claim themselves to be God, saying that I am God, I know that I am God, so on and so forth, they are actually misleading the society. And then he was very forceful in putting down these people. He used to argue, he used to say, like, God is God, always. There is no time God will forget that he is God. So if it happens so, then forgetfulness is greater than God, because God has forgotten that he is God. So forgetfulness or Maya becomes higher than God. So this is not possible, because we know, as per the scriptures, that the Lord is Sama-urdhava. That is why, there is no one who can equal him or who can go beyond him in every way. So in this way, we can, Prabhupada used to say that, you cannot become God. So he concluded by saying that if you have to be told that you are God, then you are not God. So if somebody has to come and tell you, no, you are God, you have forgotten, that means then you have to conclude that you are not God. This is logic. So Prabhupada argued like this. And then he also, we know that living entities are in Maya. So that's how he used to explain. And it is because of Maya that we have this illusion. And then these people who are in Maya, they get attracted by, because they don't impose any regulative principles. There is no restrictions. There is no sadhana. There is no attending Mangalarati. There is no, all these things are not, especially with respect to eating, there is no restriction, because that's one thing that holds up people. They wonder, oh, will I be able to do? How can I give up? And all that. Like, Prabhupada actually, even in his time, there was this one gentleman. Prabhupada called him a gentleman. He came, he was well dressed, he had a good position, and then he was known locally in the society as a very nice person. He came up and then he says, he heard about the movement and all that, and he had read about the Brahmana. So he used to come and then he used to say, Prabhupada, can you make me a Brahmana? And then he said, like, yeah, why not? I can do that. But then you have to do certain things for this. Then he said, yeah, what is it that I need to do? And then he told the 4 regulative principles of no meat eating, no illicit sex, no intoxication, no gambling. And then he said, impossible. If you give up all these 4, then you can become a Brahmana. He said, impossible. I will never be able to do that. So even a person who has a good standing, who had all the other good qualities, they fail when it comes to the 4 regulative principles. They've decided that they'll not be able to even think of such a situation where they have given up all these and then continue their existence. So he said, impossible. And Prabhupada makes that emphasis on this word. And then he said, it's impossible that I'll be able to do this. So like this, we can understand how people are not very happy about the regulative principles and all of that. And so it is quite natural for them to get misled. And this becoming God mentality is the last snare of Maya. So this is that ahango pasanam or something, the megalomaniac kind of a situation where you think that you are God or you want to become God. So this has to be refuted, not arrogantly, but in a very merciful way. And then Prabhupada also said about cheaters and cheated. Then he said that as long as people want to be cheated, there will be cheaters. Now, I used to wonder when I used to hear this, why would anybody want to get cheated willingly? I mean, that sounds so contrary, right? You don't want anybody to cheat you, right? Like you're so careful with your money or any other things. You don't allow yourself to be cheated so easily. But then when it comes to this aspect, then we just allow ourselves to be cheated. And that's what Prabhupada says. As long as people want to be cheated, then there will be cheaters. Now, we might think, are they foolish? No, they are not foolish. I mean, though, of course, they are foolish in one way because Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says, Manda Sumanda Mataya, and that is quoted by Prabhupada here. So they have this Manda Buddhi, or the Buddhi that is become dull or foolish. So now dull-brained they have become. So why the brain is dull in this case, even though they are otherwise very intelligent materially, they're very smart, in their investment or in the way they handle things with people, with successful lives they have been leading. So they have been quite intelligent in using their intelligence and all those things. But when it comes to this, then they fall flat. Why does that happen? Why do they allow themselves to be cheated? Because I heard this in the lecture that I was listening to. They said, this is because that is the primary reason why they are here or why we are here. Why did we come here to this material world? Because we wanted to become God. And that spark is somewhere there. It is, even though it is doused or it is being beaten, but still it is flickering. That desire is still there. So the moment you see an opportunity that is manifesting itself where somebody is saying that you can become God, then you grab it up. So it is your those feelings that were there of wanting to enjoy, separate from Krishna, and then you want to have a lifestyle which is like a controller like Krishna, that comes up. And so you allow yourself to be cheated in this way. So it's the false ego which blinds such the people, and then they are not able to see the truth. So Prabhupada actually spoke of the Mayavad and as well as the scientists. So we discussed a little bit in detail in the earlier class also about Mayavad. And then, of course, on the scientists also. So he always used to attack them. And then he also always used to say that we have to be wary of them. We should be very careful. We cannot be very casual towards a Mayavad or even towards a scientist, because scientists, both of them are mundane sense gratifiers, and then they try to mislead. So actually, if you look at it in one way, they are extreme ends of the Veda and Abheda Tattva. So like Chaitanya Mahaprabhu preached this Achintya Veda Abheda Tattva. So we know what is Veda and then what is Abheda. So seeing oneness and then seeing the difference. Now, the extreme end of this Veda Tattva is something where you think yourself so different that you think I am here, but then the other person is not there at all, or rather, Lord. In this instance, it is the aspect of how we try to relate to the Lord. So there is so much of Veda that we think that He is non-existent. The differentiation is so much that they deny the existence of Lord. And then in the Abheda concept, on the other end of the extreme of the spectrum, they think that there is so much of similarity that they think that they are God. So these are extreme understandings of the Veda and Abheda. So that's not the case. That's not what Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said. And it also prompts us, because there is this word achintya. So it is beyond our thinking capability, the Veda and Abheda. So we will have to go by what is in the scriptures, how Prabhupada explains it, and then just go with that, remain in the middle where we exercise this option of being discreet in accepting oneness and then rejecting it, or accepting differences and rejecting it. So we'll have to have that middle path, or the path that is enunciated by the parampara. So thereby then we will have the proper understanding. Otherwise, we'll tend to move towards these extremes, which will make us atheists, because we deny the existence of God, so much of differentiation, or we become Mayavadis, which convinces us that we can become God, or we are God already, any one of the two. So both these extreme situations are not good. So then who are we? Then we are tiny, we are Anu, we are insignificant part and parcel of the Lord. So there is no confusion or bewilderment when we accept this axiom or this truth. So we should be happy with this outlook. Now, how can we be happy with this kind of an outlook where I am nobody, I am tiny, I am insignificant, but then I am part and parcel of the Lord? So for this, Krishna is saying in Bhagavad Gita so wonderfully. He says, Brahmabhuta Prasannatma, na sochati na kanchati. So this way we'll know that we can become Brahmabhuta, and then we can become Prasanna by doing bhakti. What is that shloka? It goes on to say, Brahmabhuta Prasannatma na sochati na kanchati samasarveshu bhuteshu matbhakte abate param. So the bhakti aspect, or the aspect of seva, or the service. So whom do we serve, or the understanding of the Lord, and then the service to the Lord. So once we know this position, then we will become Prasannatma. We will become like in that stage. So there is happiness in this position of Anu, in this position of being an insignificant part and parcel. But then we should understand further, not just that aspect that we are part and parcel of the Lord, and then that's it. No, we are part and parcel of the Lord, and then we have a relationship with the Lord. And that relationship with the Lord has to be understood. And then the duty, or what is needed, in terms of serving the Lord, and then what mood I need to serve. So once we understand and then progress in this way, then we can become happy. So by this, we'll also know that imitation is a very dangerous thing. And then if you look at, it did not happen just in the past, or it's not happening now. But if you look at, even during Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's time, there has been so many apasampradayas. So the apasampradayas were around 12 or 13 of them. So I just try to read this. So here it is said, what is apasampradaya? That is a deviation from the pure teachings of the Supreme Personality of Godhead and His empowered servants. So there are 13 apasampradayas altogether. And ignorance sees them as genuine, but an experienced devotee will immediately recognize them as fraud. Practically everyone in a subtle way has this apasampradayak ideas in form of gross philosophical misunderstanding of the absolute truth. We all have it. We have these ideas which are deviations of the actual truth. But that is why we are here. If we didn't have it, then we wouldn't be here. So it is quite natural that people have their own views, which are apasampradayak kind of views. Now, those things have to be removed. Now, devotees are always compassionate and they try to help the fallen souls with good instructions. But if someone becomes insolent and arrogant and does not surrender to the instructions of the devotee, then he is disqualified from the sampradaya because of committing nama aparad. So these people then form apasampradayas, and three inauspicious qualities corrupt them. So here, what happens is there is so much of responsibility for a devotee. A devotee indirectly becomes responsible for the breakaway fractions, and then those when the breakaways happen, then they go ahead and then they propagate or they embrace certain things, and then it is easy for them to form apasampradayas, and then thereby you have a diversion, and then you did not help that individual, but then you helped him or you pushed him away. So that is why in the movement, in the temple, anywhere we are, it is so much necessary for us to be cognizant of this responsibility that we carry on our shoulders, which is given to us or entrusted to us by the sampradaya. And then we will have to act our way in showing compassion and not becoming insolent or arrogant, because that pushes people away. Now, there are three qualities or three inauspicious qualities that are generally present in all these apasampradayas. What are they? It is anitya vaibhava, that means hankering for material success, enjoyment. Then kaminera kama, that means illicit sexual affairs that are usually passed off as transcendental. It's a very dangerous thing. And then the mayavada, which is the philosophical speculation that undercuts the personal nature of God as taught by the Vaishnava Sampradaya. So it moves away from that. So these are the three main characteristics that you can see. So if you recognize any of these, you see a moment where there's too much of material hankering and then success, or if there is this approval for illicit sexual relationships or affairs, or they don't discuss about it, or it's not a taboo, and it is passed off as transcendental, that's the worst thing. And then the mayavad also, which is moving away from the form of the Lord and then going into speculation and then talking about the formless aspect of the Lord. So these are all some of the signs that tells us that this is all apasampradaya. Now there are some examples. I'll not go into the detail. I'll just read what they are. So one is karthabhaja. That means it goes with the fact that Guru is all in all. Follow him blindly. So they don't go beyond the Guru. And then they think Guru is God. So that becomes an apasampradaya, because even though we know that Guru is a representation of God, and then we treat the Guru like God, but then we know the difference. So always there is this thin line that differentiates the apasampradaya from the actual thing. So we should be aware of that. So in this case, we saw one. The next one is Gaur Nagari. So Gaur Nagari is actually Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, although God himself played the role of a devotee. But then people started depicting him as surrounded by gopis and performing Rasa Leela and so on and so forth. So even though he is non-different from Krishna, but then we don't depict Chaitanya Mahaprabhu as surrounded by gopis and then doing Rasa Leela. So there is another sect that is called as Gaur Nagaris, who are who tend to do this, who are doing this, or who started to do this, which is an apasampradaya. And then Naraneya or Nedanedi, that is worship of Lord Chaitanya with the rituals of Buddhism, that is started during the times of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu himself. Atibhari, that means the next one, which is literally means too great. And then Lord Chaitanya noticed their presence in his time. They admit that Lord Chaitanya is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, but ignore his nature as a devotee. So like this, they don't accept, taking a bit of it, something from here, and putting it together and making a hodgepodge conclusion, and that becomes a apasampradaya. Even though the ingredients or the source could be from a sampradaya, then there's a deviation, so it becomes apa. And then sahajiya. Sahajiya is taking everything cheaply and easily. This is where the aspect of illicit relationship and all becomes, it is like accepted or it is passed off. Sound like that. And then there is something called as aula. There is something called as bowl. Bowl is pretending to be mad. Then there is also more serious things like chudadhari, which is imitating Lord Nityananda. They artificially act as Avadhuta platform. So acting in that way, that is imitation, pure imitation of elevated people, especially like Nityananda Prabhu or Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Then Sakhi Bekis. So they imitate gopis by performing Rasa Leela with person who wears a chuda and a crown of peacock feathers. Just as Lord Ram dresses himself in Vrindavan. Lord Krishna dresses himself in Vrindavan. They may even dress like gopis and live in Vrindavan. So it's all externally copying things and then trying to act out that part and all. So Sakhi Bekis and Chuda Dharis, both of them have identical philosophy, except that one group dresses like gopis and the other one is like Krishna. So there are a lot of such things that happen. Then the next one, the 10th one, which is called as Smarthas or Smartha Brahmanas. So there, for them, they do all this or worship of Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Krishna is there, but that is not to please him, but to elevate themselves to higher planets. So they have some desires, and that is elevation. They also misconceive the 5 independent gods. They say they are independent. The 5 independent gods. So that itself is a misconception. Dependent gods we know, right? The sun god, Ganesha, Shiva, Durga, and Krishna. And then among them, they are free to choose anyone they like. After all, everyone is one in the end. So this is their theory, which is an Apasampradaya. Then Dara Vesha. This is in the Muslim population. These are Muslims or Sufi mendicants influenced by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Even they were influenced. Of course, the Lord is Lord, no? Everybody is influenced by him. So you have that influence here. So although contaminated with Mayavada philosophy. So you have that group which have their own philosophy. Then there you have the Sain or the Sani. So they are mendicants who do not follow any rigid programs of rules and regulations, having supposedly renounced all external designations. They are also contaminated by Sufism. So there are some small variations, and then there are these different sects. So there are these identified ones which I'm just reading. Then the Jat Goswamis, the family or the caste Goswamis, they are also Aprasampradaya. They are followers of Shukracharya, the guru of demons, and then they are interested in money and position for their descendants. So they do Ritvik pujas and other things so that their dependents can progress well materially. So they will do this homa, that one, to elongate the life, to get wealth, to get good health, to get position, all of that. So this is also an Apasampradaya because this is not why the Vedas are meant to be. So, and then in the modern day also there is this Ritvikism, which we all are aware of. So that also becomes an Apasampradaya. So in conclusion, we know that these philosophers, they think that all are one, everything is one, and then they merge. So one learning is that imitation is very dangerous. So here also in this example or in this today's verse, we saw how Arhat imitated Rishabhadeva by pulling the hair, living in unclean surroundings, and then no killing, and then you sweep the floor before you walk on it, and all of that. So the message is very clear that we should not imitate. So if we don't have to imitate, then what do we do? How do we follow? So Bhagavad Gita tells us that also. Bhagavad Gita says, Manmana Bhavamat Bhakto, and then it also says, Sarva Dharman Parityajya. In the interest of time, I'm just not going into the detail of these. So we should follow these instructions of Lord Krishna and not imitate. Not you don't dress up like Krishna and then wearing a peacock feather and then walking around with a flute. No, that is not following. Following is following the instructions. So this is something that the devotees are very clear because we have been instructed so nicely, so wonderfully by the parampara, by the senior devotees. So we understand and then we are amused when we think, even to speak that we don't go around wearing can we just imagine ourselves with a peacock and a flute? We never imagined it also. So even for imagination, we don't do that. So this is how we've been so well pulled or kept within the 4 tenets of the Sampradaya and not allowing, now it is, the onus is on us not to, pull ourselves out of the Sampradaya and then get into the Sampradaya. And also at the same time, another responsibility of not only for ourselves, but also for people who are in, by not behaving in an insolent way and not driving them away. So these are 2 great things that we have to do, because this mood of cooperation, sometimes there is this tendency of trying to be a little gross, a little harsh and all that in the name of Seva again. But that's not the right thing. So there also we need to take care. And then if you just hear, I just conclude with the greatness of Lord Krishna. If you just recall the 64 qualities of the Lord, or try to recall or know that there are 4 which are unique to him. If you look at creation, if you read about creation in Srimad Bhagavatam, Sarga, the Visarga, or even the 10 characteristics of what is there in Bhagavatam, then the various avatars of the Lord, the various expansions, Then the 6 opulences that are there of the Lord and how he is having it in full. Then how he is Satchit and Ananda, how he is the controller, he is Ishvara, he is the greatest mystic. And then he is Anumanta, he is the sanctioning authority. He is also Upadrishta, he is in our heart, he is overseeing everything. So there is no way that we can copy him, or we should not copy him, but we should just follow his instruction. And that is the reason why they all laughed, because you saw somebody who was copying Krishna, that is Pounder with Vasudeva, and that's how they all burst out laughing. So, but then it is not a laughing matter, it's a matter for, it's a very grave matter, and then it is a matter of seriousness. We should educate such people and then try to get them out of that particular misconception. So, and that is what Prabhupada is saying in this particular verse, and in the subsequent verses also we'll continue to see something similar. So on this note, I'll end here. Thank you so much. Dhanwas Pranams. If there are any comments or anything that anybody wants to add, please go ahead. Hare Krishna. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Prabhuji, for the very wonderful and nectarian instructive class. Like how you started with like how the imitation is always there, even at the time of Krishna. So there was imitation, and like you in between, like you told, like we have to be very careful with the Mayavadis. We should not be like casual, and how the like material sciences are like completely other edge of the Bheda of different things, and then how the Apara Sampradayas were there even during earlier days and during Chaitanya Mahaprabhu time also. And there you mentioned that like devotees are indirectly responsible for starting these Apara Sampradayas, like they break away and then they start some false Sampradayas or up Sampradayas. And then you talked about all the, I mean, 3 common things that are common in the Up Sampradaya. Then you talked starting with the Kartabhaja and all those things, and how these are completely misleading, like taking just one part and then leaving out the all other parts. And I mean, very nice project, and it is very instructive. And you told that how we have to be very careful even while doing the service. And everybody knows that like how you deal with like very softly with the devotees, like even if they do little bit mistakes. And you are example for that, like taking care of the devotees. I mean, even during like seva, like you the way you tell us, so it is very nice project. Thank you so much, Prabhuji, and for being the example also. And thanks, devotees lines are unmuted, so you can unmute and ask any questions. Gaurchan Gopinath Prabhu told, thank you for the wonderful class, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna Prabhu, Dandat Pranams from Uttara Mataji. Hare Krishna devotees, any other questions or comments?
Hare Krishna Prabhu, Dandavat Pranam, wonderful class. Prabhu, the Paundraka, they say he has even tried to duplicate Srivatsa. Is that true?
You are on mute, Prabhuji.
I just noticed. Sorry. So Mataji, he was trying to copy Krishna in every way. So in fact, the class that I was listening to, he said he attached 2 more hands to himself. So when he had gone into so much of detail, and then he wore the Kaustubh jewel also, I mean, an imitation of it. So he was trying to copy in every way. So actually, so it is true that he would have done everything. In fact, that story, there is this story in Bhagavatam which is talking about the liberation of Paunduraka king and king of Kashi. So that's the chapter where I think actually so much he was thinking of Krishna, but he was imitating, that Krishna became merciful and gave him liberation. That's another aspect. That's a pastime of the Lord. But then that doesn't mean that we should also do that. But yeah, he would have copied. Yes, Mataji. To answer your question, yes, I think. Though it's not mentioned specifically, but the mentality was to copy everything, and then he was convinced that he was Krishna himself or Vasudeva.
Prabhu, Dandavat Pranam.